Here we go. It's our guy, Jim Duquette, MLB Network Radio, Sirius XM. Jim, of course, joins us every single week. Former GM, MLB, Mets, and Orioles, MLB Network Radio, Sirius XM. You can follow him on X at Jim Duquette GM. All brought to you by Flatstick Pub, whether it's a date night, guys' night, ladies' night, or a large group event. Ladies and gentlemen, they got you covered. Visit one of their 6 locations across the Northwest at flatstickpub.com. Big thanks to Andy Largent and the crew. Jim, how are you? Good weekend?
It was a good weekend. I was in New York doing some pregame and postgame for the New York Mets, their TV, SNY. So Mets Dodgers, which I know we're going to talk about a little bit. Always watching baseball. It was good that the Mets were on the West Coast because the weather's a little cool in New York. So, it's not as cold as in Colorado where the Mariners were, but it was a little chilly.
That was brutal. Have you ever seen it, been a part of something like that where you wake up to get ready for the game, and then all of a sudden you look on the field, there's snow covered, snow has covered the field, and then a few hours later they're playing a baseball game. It was insane.
We had a couple. So the first year that Colorado opened up that ballpark, we were supposed to play a game. It might have been in the 94-95 season during the strike year. We had replacement players and they had snow on the ground. We delayed that particular game. Then we ended up playing it later. We also had a game. I'll never forget this. This was in 2003. We had just signed Tom Glavine from the Braves. It's his first start as a New York Met. It's opening day. It's like 27 degrees. He can barely feel the ball, and he's getting shellacked by the Cubs, and the fans booed him off the field. His first start, and there's snowflakes everywhere. It was crazy. And we're like, man, welcome to New York, buddy. Welcome to New York, Tom Glavine. It's not a great start.
No, the players looked miserable. I'll tell you that one. Just looked absolutely miserable out there. Just that looked like they did not want to be a part of it whatsoever. Hey, one of these things when we record this, it's Monday, April 22nd. We talk all things baseball here with Jim Duquette, again, MLB Network Radio, Sirius XM. And again, big thanks to the Flatstick Pub, flatstickpub.com for bringing you Jim's weekly appearance here, pucksports.com. Normally we're reacting kind of the weekend stuff, but we have a game as we're recording it right now that's taking place between Oakland and the New York Yankees. Now, when you go back and watch the highlights of this game, you're going to see an interaction between the home plate umpire and Aaron Boone of the Yankees. Some barking going back and forth between, perhaps a missed call. The home plate umpire is looking in the Yankees dugout and having a conversation back and forth. And eventually Aaron Boone gets ejected from the game from the home plate umpire because he thinks that he heard something coming from the Yankees dugout. But it's clear as it's on video that it's not Aaron Boone, it's somebody from the stands that said something, and the home plate umpire thought it was Boone. And then you hear, because the audio's picked it up all, you hear the home plate umpire say, well, it wasn't Aaron Boone. And he's like, it doesn't matter. I don't care. Now that this has been picked up, what is Major League Baseball going to do? Because one thing that all sports, and all they do this, Major League Baseball isn't immune to it. There is no punishment whatsoever for these officials or umpires or what have you. What do you think the reaction of Major League Baseball is going to be today about this incident that happened on Monday?
Well, first off, it's good to have video evidence, right? So a lot of times you don't, and so it's usually the umpire's word versus whoever's word. In this case, Aaron Boone's. But because you have video, and luckily the camera, the way the Yankees cameras, it's at home at Yankee Stadium, the cameras were faced right on Aaron, and they had a broader view of the stands, and they actually could see a fan about 3 rows back, almost over Aaron Boone's left shoulder, but it was in the stands, yelling something at the umpire, and the umpire tossing him. And this is a major mistake that, from the umpire side of things, you have to try to get things right. I can't believe he just said that his response, Hunter Wendelstedt is the home plate umpire. He said, I don't care who said it, you're gone. He ought to have said, or Aaron could have said to him, "Aren't you trying to get this right? Like this, because this clearly didn't come out of the dugout, and that's why Aaron came out and was so frustrated by it, obviously." So, in Major League Baseball, this has been a problem for the umpires for a long time. Whether it's Angel Hernandez, CB Buckner, or some of these umpires that everybody knows their name because they're lousy, right? And when they're going to make mistakes. I think you have to kind of understand that, realize that. But when it's consistently bad, there has to be some kind of ramifications and there has to be some kind of punishment. And MLB says they have accountability. They really don't. Their accountability is, well, they don't give them assignments for better games like the All-Star game or postseason, which is added money in their pocket. But real accountability is being able to fire an umpire. That's what, if over periods of time you have shown that you aren't good at your job. And that's where I think fans have problems with it. Players have issues, front office, like everybody in the sport has issues with it. And it's mostly because of the union and these negotiated contracts that have been over time, to the point where these umpires basically have, what's the form of tenure that you have, on a college campus, basically.
I mean, honestly, it's one of the only professions I can think where you literally cannot get fired from it. I mean, these players get fired all the time. They're told they're not good enough. GMs get fired, managers get fired, coaches, players in other sports get fired all the time. But yet these guys don't, and they can just routinely make mistakes, and there's no punishment for it. Like, we suspend players all the time for doing stuff. I don't know why we don't just publicly suspend these umpires when they screw stuff up, and why he couldn't just, when he realized that he had screwed up, because he knows he screwed up, just say, wait, stop. Let me change the call here. You're not ejected. Stay in the game. He could have easily done that, but now his ego's in the way, so he doesn't want to do it.
That's exactly it, and that's the big problem a lot of these umpires have is there is a huge ego that's involved. They're some of the best in the world at what they do, but they also, there's some of these guys who can't admit that they make mistakes. And listen, it's a tough job because everybody is basically gunning for you. Both sides don't never like the entire job that you do, but you know this. You signed up for it. And these guys are paid really, really well. So I think that in that particular case, I wonder if I don't know what ramifications you could have had, but he could have called the umpires in together and had a conversation. In a rare case, he could have called New York. Hey, did you guys get video of that? And am I off, and wrong? Because this is important. It's an important part of the game here. An ejection, a second batter of the game. There's some things I think you just have to try to use common sense, and we don't have a lot of that right now when it comes to these type of situations.
Is it? You think it's a fear factor from these older umpires or just guys that have been in it for a while? Because they know what's on the horizon. I mean, we're, you can tell me, how far are we away from this automated balls and strikes? I mean, it feels like it's right around the corner. And so are they feeling pressure and just overwhelmed? And almost, it seems like some of these guys are very defensive about their job right now.
I think, now I've had a lot of conversations with umpires, both on my show and off the record, and they claim that they embrace the video, the replay, and because they're trying to get the job right or the call right, as well. And it's almost like it takes a lot of the pressure off of them because they know if they're wrong, you can always go to to review to get it right. So, in some ways there are calls that have been, missed, and you're like, what the heck is going on here? That's a call that absolutely was out. He called him safe. Like it almost feels like they've had a letdown, in some ways, and that have kind of lost a little bit of an edge. So it's kind of, I feel like it's kind of almost like the reverse in some ways. But then there's the old school umpires, like you said. It's just sometimes you're on the job that you've been on this for a long time, and you've just been beat down an awful lot, and you just feel like, hey, that was my call. You're going to have to live with it, and I'll deal with the ramifications afterward. Not that there's a lot of ramifications to really deal with, So, that's I think the frustrating part is I think maybe if they had the ability to be suspended for a period of time, maybe they would be more open to discussing when they do make a mistake and see if they can get it right, just within their own ranks, within their own discussions. If you can't go to, let's say, a replay.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point you brought up earlier, the fact that when you know these guys first and last name, you know them by name, that's a bad thing. It's a bad thing for the sport in any sport. I don't care what it is. When you know the officials first and full name, it's that now becomes they have become part of the sport.
I'll tell you this, Jason. You and I both coach youth level, right? I've got 12-year-old baseball players that know Angel Hernandez's name, and they know that he's a bad umpire. That tells you something. When kids that are, not even shaving yet know the bad umpires at the major league level, it's just not good enough for what you expect at the major league level.
While you were working and covering the Mets and watching the Mets and Dodgers this weekend, in which the Mets now have kind of turned their season around, we'll get to them because they got up to such a poor start, but boy, they've kind of flipped the script. They take 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers, and the Dodgers right now 13-11. You would say that they certainly have underperformed for the amount of money that they have spent on the team. So we have that angle with the Dodgers, but then the other angle is, of course, Shohei Ohtani, the historic home run, most home runs for a Japanese player coming over here to Major League Baseball. The team hasn't performed, but it's certainly not due to Ohtani not performing. He's performed as well as the guy they paid all $700 million for. What is going on with them right now, and why are they just 13-11?
So there's a couple of things, and Mookie Betts is performing, offensively. Freddie Freeman's performing. In some degree, Will Smith, who's the fourth hole hitter right now, or Teoscar Hernandez, they are on occasion, but the bottom of their lineup is like almost dead last, bottom third of their lineup. So they don't have as much depth with their offense at the moment. There's some issues on the defensive side. Mookie Betts trying to play shortstop on the fly. It's going to be a little rough on occasion. We've seen some some routine errors that good shortstops play. He's just learning the position. He's never played it much. So Max Muncy at third. So their defense is below average there. I'll say this more than anything: their pitching is short. Starting pitching in particular. They had an injury to Bobby Miller, one of their young starters who's really good. Walker Buehler, one of the top starters in the game, hasn't come back yet. Clayton Kershaw hasn't come back yet. So they're missing some big pieces right now in their rotation. And just like everybody else, when you have those injuries, you're going to take a little bit of a step back. And that's where they are at the moment. They're still good. I really like their team overall, but some of the things that they're going through right now, this stretch has been a little rocky, and the Mets took advantage.
What has caused the Mets to turn it around? Because again, the first week of the season didn't look good. And my God, I was watching something, I think MLB Network, and it's like the first weekend of the season. We're already talking about, well, what are we going to do with Pete Alonso? Like, where is he going to go? Where are they going to move him? But they've righted the ship. How have they done it?
Yeah, they lost the first 5 games of the season. They were 8 through the game 6 of that season. They were 8 innings they were losing, and then Pete Alonso hit a home run to tie it, and then they end up winning in extra innings. And then from there, they've won 5 straight series. They've won 11 of 15, and they're doing it a couple ways. First, their offense hasn't started to click on all cylinders yet. Alonso hasn't started to hit. Lindor just started to heat up this weekend, but he hadn't done much. They were being carried by Starling Marte and Brandon Nimmo, and not an awful lot of some of their young guys. Francisco Alvarez, who just got injured, is going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks. But their pitching has been way better than anyone expected at the moment. They're number 1, I think, overall. Number 2 overall. Their bullpen is the best right now in the sport. I don't think that'll continue, but former Mariner Edwin Diaz, is back healthy. He's not quite the same yet. He missed all last year, as with the knee issue, but blew out the knee. But you can see he's coming along well, and their new young manager Carlos Mendoza, he's pushed a lot of the right buttons so far. I have to say I've been impressed with his early start as a manager. I think that he was a bench coach for the Yankees before he became the Mets manager, and I think that bench coach role and training has helped him as a guy that plans ahead for making some of these moves. I've been really impressed early on with him.
Going back to Ohtani, I mean, he's not gonna pitch this year in any role.
Right.
Next season, when he's fully recovered from it, do you expect him going right back into the rotation? Do you think they'll do a new role for him that they'll create? What do you envision Ohtani as the 2-way player next season, and then what will they do with him pitching wise?
So when I was in their camp, I asked a question. Not it was off the record, but it was like, just hey, what's the plan? Their intention and Otani's intention. So Dodgers and Otani, both is to have him come back and start. He wants to start. He's expected to start. That was part of the signing him and giving him that much money that he would do both start and hit. And I do wonder though at some point if that is going to be the role long term. Like I can't imagine, I can't see him being able to do both of those roles, the dual roles at that high level throughout the term of the contract. So either he just becomes a hitter, or you could have some kind of hybrid role where he comes out of the bullpen, which I think he would be fantastic as a multi-inning guy or even a closer. Let's say he finishes the last two innings, eighth and ninth inning, you maybe give him a day or two off and he does it again. I could see that type of role for him too down the road. But I think their intention and his intention is to come back as a starter. So I'm kind of curious how that's going to go, how the rehab process is going to go, because we really don't know. They were very secretive on the type of surgery that he had. And I think it was more kind of a brace type of arrangement where they kind of, because there wasn't a complete tear in there. And they said it wasn't on the original, the tear wasn't on the original Tommy John surgery. It was on the other end. So there's some, I think, not real clear information on what this surgery that he's actually coming back from. So we don't have a ton to kind of go on as a track record and really to be able to analyze.
Hey, Jim, going back to the Mariners, taking the 2 out of 3 of the Rockies in the first game on Sunday of that doubleheader they had. George Kirby was pitching in that game, and he went 5 innings, snapped their streak of the quality starts. Comes out of that inning, 80 plus pitches in it, and if you were watching the game, he just looked. My takeaway was he looked sick. He didn't look healthy. But then Scott Service and Kirby say afterwards that he's been dealing with some arm soreness, and Kirby didn't seem too concerned. Hey, I think I'll be okay in a couple of days. Now, for me, I panic and I get all the red flags start shooting off in my head. And with all the arm injuries we've been dealing with this year, right, with guys like, big name pitchers, how cautious should the organization be when you hear one of your top phenom pitchers come out of a game and say, yeah, my arm's been feeling sore? How should they move forward right now with George Kirby, you think?
So, the interesting thing on this and it's not atypical of a starting pitcher when you pitch in Colorado at Coors. There's a little more effort that you have to kind of exert to get more movement on your fastball, extra break on the breaking ball. And if you're new, and I don't know how many times George has pitched there at Coors, but new pitchers come in there, sometimes they have trouble, sometimes they don't bounce back quickly. I've had starting pitchers come back and say, wow, I feel like I just went 9 innings, and they went 5 or 6. And I'm wondering if that was some of that related to the altitude and the impact that it has on you as a pitcher or a position player physically, that he isn't used to. And again, hopeful, because we know Mariners, obviously he's one of the top pitchers in the game, but I'm hopeful it's something along those lines. And that's why I was looking at the indicators that you were with Scott Service, and that's how I read into his information, just from my experiences, that maybe this was something that now once they leave Coors, he'll respond better. Maybe they give him an extra day or two. Maybe they miss him a start, but he'll come back from.
Panic time in Houston, and if it's not, when does it become panic time for these guys?
Boy, there's a time where, I go back to their history, as good as they've been. I want to say it was the 2016 season when they had a terrible start to the year. And it was so bad. E.J. Hinch was their manager. And it was right before the 2017 season where they went to the World Series. That was the cheating scandal, the bang the can season for them. But 2016, really slow start. And then they couldn't recover. They got over 500, but they ran out of time. They missed out on the postseason. That's the only time in the last 8-9 years that they've had this type of slow start and didn't get to the postseason. And so that's in the back of my mind going, I don't know if they can recover. Yeah, there's still a lot of time left, and they have seeing Verlander pitch the other day. That was his first start coming back. He looked really good, but they're still missing Framber Valdez, and they're still missing another starter or two that you have to be a little concerned about. Christian Javier came out of the game, didn't start on yesterday with a crick in his neck. So okay, but it's a very tight rope that they're on right now with their pitching, and I am worried about them at the moment. Still think there's time to recover, especially with the extra wild card team. That bar is a little lower, but I'm concerned about their start and whether they dig themselves too.
Yeah, I mean, the only kind of saving grace for them is kind of what the saving grace was for the Mariners in the first 2 weeks of the season, is that no one is pulling away in the division, right? I mean, it's the Mariners at 11-11 right now, as we recorded on Monday, are a half game out of first place, and they're playing the Rangers here coming up on Tuesday for the next three. So no one in their division is kind of distancing themselves, but yeah, I mean, you do get to a point where it's just not working for you. And I just wonder what, kind of next moves maybe Houston would go with if they find themselves, I don't know what, 4 or 5 weeks from now. Is that when you have to decide what you want to do?
It used to be right around when the amateur draft was, which was the first week of June. Executives, Memorial Day, first week of June, executives are like, hey, just get me through the draft and then we'll start looking at the trade deadline. So that's normal time. So yeah, maybe 5 weeks from now, 6 weeks from now, there's a team or two that will make an aggressive move. Rangers traded for Aroldis Chapman, I want to say at the end of May last year. There's always one or two like that, but most of the time, they wait into June and even end of June before you start seeing some movement on the trade deadline. So yeah, I still think we're a little further away. I'll tell you, 2 years ago when the Phillies got to the World Series, their start got Joe Girardi fired, if you remember. But they were like 8 games under 500. Rob Thompson took over, and then they just shot through to the postseason. They got in very late, kind of like Arizona did last year with like the 84, 85 wins somewhere in that, and then they just won a great run in the postseason. So there's still those examples out there that you can kind of point to for some of these slow starting teams.
How much fun, you being on the East Coast, how much fun is this American League East? Every team's got a winning record. This thing is going to be amazing all summer long to watch all these teams go at it. They're all just good. For the Orioles' perspective, they're young. But I mean, this is one of the best stories that we have right now in the beginning of the baseball season. All these teams look like they're going to go the next 5-6 months just going at it.
It really does look that way. Toronto obviously is a really good team, and they don't get talked a lot about. Tampa every year is good. They stay in the mix. The Yankees, I think, to me, are the big surprise at the moment on how good they've been, because Aaron Judge hasn't really done anything.
He was getting booed the other night. How about him getting booed on his bobblehead night?
Booed on bobblehead night? That's what happens in New York, man. They jump off your ship fast if you don't produce. But they've been carried by Juan Soto, as Eduardo Cabrera, who's a young rookie kind of utility player, and then Anthony Volpe, their shortstop. That's it. And their pitching's been very good. But if I had Brian Cashman on my show yesterday, I asked him, said, if you said in spring training, no Garrett Cole, because he's been hurt, Aaron Judge off to a slow start, Anthony Rizzo, Gleyber Torres off to slow starts, injury to one of their top relievers, the Loaisiga, and you're first place in the AL East, he goes, we would have taken it. And we even said that in the spring, like, oh man, because they have a very tough schedule the first 6 weeks, and they had these injuries. They were really concerned about their start, and in fact, it's gone the other direction for them.
You think Soto will sign during the season, or do they want to let this thing go to the end? Does his representation? He's a Boris guy, right?
He's a Boris guy, and this is going to have to go into the postseason, into the wintertime, because I really look at, there's probably 3 or 4 teams, but I know the 2 New York teams are going to be all over him. And, to not have him available to the Mets ownership, who's willing to spend a ton of money, I think he'd be doing a disservice to Soto and how much money he can actually get. So I don't think, unless the Yankees wanted to go to, a number that you go, okay, over 500 million as an example, because he's so young, in 14 years, some kind of record like that. I think that they end up just playing this out. Brian Cashman basically said that the other day. He goes, we're just going to enjoy him for however long he's here. And so just knowing both sides and knowing Boris himself, I don't see any type of signing going on during the
That
season.
is the great Jim Duquette, former MLB GM for the Mets and Orioles. You can catch him MLB Network Radio, Sirius XM. Follow him on X, by the way, at Jim Duquette GM. His weekly Monday appearance here at pucksports.com, brought to you by Flatstick Pub. Whether it's a date night, guys night, ladies night, large group event, they've got you covered. Visit one of their 6 locations across the Northwest at flatstickpub.com. All right, Jim, until next week, we'll talk to you then, my friend.
Okay.
There he is, Jim
Thanks.
Duquette, MLB Network Radio. Be sure on all the podcast platforms, rate, like, subscribe, comment away. We could use all the help. Please do so. And we will talk to you soon. Until then, we promise to be better.
No shoes, no ties.
Would anybody like to smoke some pot?
Yeah.
I was born to love you. I was born to lick your face. I was born to rub you. But you were born to rub me first.
What do you need my address for?
We'd like to send out a mailer.
Mother of mercy, I don't speak Japanese!